Hello everyone, and welcome to History of the Ancient World. Today we're diving deep into a topic that has shaped civilizations since the dawn of time: politics and power. How did our ancient ancestors organize themselves, choose their leaders, and decide who gets to make the rules? It's a story of ambition, innovation, and sometimes brutal conflict. From the very first city-states to the sprawling empires that dominated continents, the quest for power has been the engine of history. Let's travel back to Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, around 3500 BC. Here, in cities like Uruk and Ur, we see the first whispers of organized government. Initially, power was often in the hands of temple priests. They weren't just spiritual guides. They managed the city's grain stores, organized labor for irrigation projects, and were seen as intermediaries between the people and the gods. In a world where a good harvest meant life and a drought meant death, keeping the gods happy was the most important job. This form of government, where religious figures hold the power, is called a theocracy. The temple was the center of everything. Economic, spiritual, and political life all revolved around it. But as cities grew larger and more complex, a new kind of leader emerged: the king. Often, these were powerful military leaders who proved their worth by defending the city from invaders or by conquering neighboring lands. Think of figures like Sargon of Akkad, who created one of the world's first empires around 2334 BC. He wasn't a priest. He was a warrior who united different city-states under his single, absolute rule. This shift from priest-ruler to warrior king was a monumental change. Power was no longer just about divine favor, it was about military might. The palace began to rival the temple as the center of authority. Kings created laws, like the famous Code of Hammurabi, to bring order to their growing realms and justify their rule as a divine mandate for justice. Now let's journey west to ancient Egypt, a civilization known for its stability and long-lasting dynasties. The Egyptian political system was dominated by one central figure: the pharaoh. The pharaoh was not just a king, he was considered a living god on earth, the son of Ra, the sun god. This divine status gave him absolute power. His word was law, and he owned all the land in Egypt. This system, a divine monarchy, was incredibly effective for thousands of years. The pharaoh's authority was supported by a vast bureaucracy of scribes, officials, and regional governors called nomarchs. This complex administrative machine collected taxes, managed resources, and enforced the pharaoh's will across the kingdom. The pyramids themselves are a testament to this power: massive public works projects that required incredible organization and control over labor and resources, all dedicated to ensuring the pharaoh's journey into the afterlife. But what happens when you take the gods out of the equation, or at least put them in a different role? Let's head over to ancient Greece, specifically to the city-state of Athens around the 5th century BC. Here, a radical new idea about power took root: democracy, or rule by the people. Of course, their people didn't include women, slaves, or foreigners, but for the adult male citizens who did qualify, it was a revolutionary concept. Instead of a king or a priest making all the decisions, the citizens themselves gathered in an assembly, the ecclesia, to debate and vote on laws, declare war, and elect officials. This was direct democracy in action. Figures like Pericles championed this system, arguing that public participation made the state stronger. It was a messy, loud, and often chaotic process, but it placed power directly into the hands of a portion of its citizens in a way the world had never seen before. Of course, not all of Greece was democratic. Just a short journey away was Sparta, Athens' great rival. Sparta was an oligarchy, which means rule by the few. Power was concentrated in the hands of two kings, a council of elders called the Gerousia, and 5 elected officials known as ephors. But the real power lay with the warrior class, the Spartiates. Spartan society was entirely structured around military readiness. From birth, Male citizens were trained to be soldiers, and this military elite held all the political power. It was a rigid, disciplined, and conservative system that stood in stark contrast to the open, artistic, and democratic culture of Athens. The conflict between Athens and Sparta, the Peloponnesian War, was more than just a military struggle. It was a clash of two opposing political ideologies, democracy versus oligarchy. As the Greek city-states weakened themselves through infighting, a new power rose to the north. Macedon, under Philip II and his son Alexander the Great. Alexander was a military genius who, in just over a decade, carved out one of the largest empires in the ancient world, stretching from Greece to India. His rule was that of an absolute monarch and conqueror. He didn't ask for votes, he commanded armies. After his death, his empire shattered into several Hellenistic kingdoms, each ruled by one of his generals. These new kings, like Ptolemy in Egypt and Seleucus in Asia, adopted the trappings of both Greek and local traditions. They ruled as absolute monarchs, often deifying themselves in the style of Eastern rulers, while also promoting Greek culture in their new capital cities, like Alexandria in Egypt. This fusion of Greek and Eastern political styles would define the region for centuries. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate master of ancient politics and power, Rome. Rome's story is one of incredible transformation. It began as a small city-state ruled by kings. Then, around 509 BC, it became a republic. The Roman Republic was a complex system designed to prevent any one person from having too much power. It was a form of oligarchy, where power was held by the wealthy aristocratic class, the patricians, who served in the Senate. 2 consuls were elected each year to lead the government and the army, but their power was limited by short terms and the ability to veto each other. However, the common people, the plebeians, fought for their rights over centuries, eventually gaining their own representatives, the tribunes, who could veto acts of the Senate. This constant tension and compromise between the classes was a hallmark of republican politics. But as Rome's territory expanded through conquest, the republic's institutions began to crumble under the strain. Powerful generals like Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar commanded armies that were more loyal to them than to the state. They amassed incredible personal power and wealth, leading to a series of devastating civil wars. Ultimately, it was Caesar's adopted son Octavian who brought an end to the Republic. After defeating his rivals, he was given the title Augustus and became the first Roman emperor. He cleverly maintained the illusion of the Republic, keeping the Senate and other offices, but in reality, all power was now concentrated in his hands. This marked the birth of the Roman Empire, a system that would combine military autocracy with a sophisticated civil administration to rule over a vast and diverse population for nearly 500 years in the West. So, from the priest-kings of Mesopotamia to the citizen assemblies of Athens, from the divine pharaohs of Egypt to the complex republican system and eventual empire of Rome, the ancient world was a laboratory for politics. These early civilizations grappled with the fundamental questions we still face today. Who should rule? How should power be distributed? And what is the proper relationship between the ruler and the ruled? The answers laid the groundwork for every political system that has followed. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the politics and power of the ancient world. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the past. Let me know in the comments which ancient political system you find the most fascinating. Thanks for watching and see you next time.